People have been against forced marriage becoming a criminal offence because they would argue it will drive it all underground. Well, forced marriage is already underground. So I don't think you could go any further underground than it is. And people say it's going to be very hard for a young person in particular to testify against parents and family members. That's true, but that's true of any type of abuse a young person's reporting. And as long as it's done in the correct way with special measures and sensitivity, that young person will have the courage to come forward. When criminalisation comes in, one of the things that we would imagine will happen, there'll be a peak of cases being reported to Freedom Charity. And it's us then being able to take this programme forward to ensure that there isn't one victim or potential victim whose voice isn't heard because there isn't the resources there. I think the government have said they've got a desire to help, and I just think now they're going to have to put their actions into money and resources to ensure that every young person that comes forward is addressed correctly and helped, and to prevent this horrendous crime. Legal aid is really essential, that if victims come forward that they're properly represented and have the correct care afforded to them and the best solicitors out there. And actually, because we're talking about the most vulnerable, I would hope that it's not going to affect them in terms of the legal aid cuts, but we're confident that they will be given the help and support. And it will have to be, unfortunately, the voluntary sector, the charity sector that pick up the pieces to try and help these people. Often you've got communities that are very inward looking and haven't integrated with the West, and people are trying to hold on to values that their parents don't even have anymore. So when we find out that perpetrators are now often a 22-year-old man, you know, that's so worrying, that why they are taking on this horrendous crime and not moving forward with the rest of the UK, because these are often British citizens we're talking about. I think any case that we deal with, certainly when we're dealing with a rescue or, you know, freeing somebody, be it from a life of domestic servitude, sex slavery, whatever it is very, very distressing, but also very rewarding. But we know for that potential person that comes out, they're on a roller coaster. There'll be highs and lows, but it's trying to help them through all the changes that they're going to face. I think it's going to be very difficult for anyone to report anything, but when they know the weight of the law is behind that young person that comes forward to report, hopefully that will give them confidence. And when we start getting the first prosecutions, it should start to make a difference. We're calling it dishonour violence, dishonour crimes, dishonour killings. None of those terms are really strong enough to describe what we're looking at, but using the term honour is completely wrong, and we're pandering to perpetrators. For us, when we go into schools, colleges, universities, the potential victim often don't know. When they're taken abroad to get married and they're going to a cousin's wedding, they don't know that they're going to be the young person marrying their own cousin. They have no idea that's going to happen. But if their best friends are alerted, if that person doesn't come back or goes missing, they can then set the alarms going for everybody else. So that's why education prevention is crucial for us. Letting people know about what to do, and doing nothing isn't an option. A forced marriage is very simple. It's a marriage where one or both parties have a level of duress, where they're forced to get married against their will. It doesn't always mean that you're dragged onto a plane kicking and screaming and you're taken abroad to an exotic country and then you're married. It often is the case, but that isn't always a forced marriage. It can be a drip-drip effect. It can be a silent pressure that's put on young people. An arranged marriage is very different. It's where you're introduced to somebody and you have the option to say no as many times as you want to. And for many people, arranged marriages work. Often it works like a dating site where you're introduced to someone that parents, family, friends feel may be appropriate for you. And actually the Royal Family in the UK would say there are very many arranged marriages that have happened over the centuries and still happen today. But a forced marriage is very different. And at the time there were a number of charities in the sector that dealt with forced marriage, and they dealt with survivors, people that had come out the other end of it. And when I was talking to those organisations, nobody was dealing with the prevention work around it. And I couldn't understand, if you're dealing with the aftermath, why you're not dealing with the cure, why you're not dealing with it before it happens. What is a forced marriage? And what does it lead to? A forced marriage is basically, I've said, when someone is forced to marry against their will. Well, what difference would that make? Why should we be worried about that? Well, what does that entail? It leads to a life of domestic abuse. It leads to a life of imprisonment, of slavery. It leads to a life of being serially raped every night. If you are forced to have any sexual relationship within that marriage, it's rape. it can ultimately lead to murder. There are very high profile cases of a number of young girls in the UK that have been murdered in a forced marriage. And when this charity was set up, one of the things that I was really passionate about, that forced marriage must be a criminal offence in the UK. How on earth, in a really civilised, progressive, fantastic country, can forced marriage not be a criminal offence? I don't apologise for making the following statement. If forced marriage was a white middle class issue, it would already be a criminal offence, because it affects young women in particular that are often hidden from society, that nobody wants to talk about. It has been allowed to be under the radar. And when we set the charity up, one of the things I knew we had to have was a 24-hour helpline. I knew that was one of the things that was crucially important, because talking to young people, asking them to speak to a civil servant is quite a difficult ask. Having a call centre manned by professionals 24 hours a day that can take text, because that's how most young people are going to communicate with you, had to be essential. So on my wish list was a call centre. We have a 24-hour helpline with 20 professionals at the other end of it that take calls. And we treat each call as a last chance call. And we are the only charity that deals with forced marriage, dishonour, race violence, female genital mutilation, slavery now, that will take a call any time of the day or night on those issues. And we have the trained professionals there. I've met hundreds and hundreds of victims of forced marriage, and more potential victims. And I have never met a perpetrator, a parent or a brother or someone that's committing these offences, these crimes, these inhumanities, that will openly admit that they ever forced their child into a marriage or an early marriage. No one will ever admit to that. It's already really deep underground. And when we talk about young people coming forward, or anybody coming forward to give evidence against their parents and their family, Graham and I know from experience that is incredibly difficult. The social workers, the people, the professionals that are already doing this, already know it's a really impossibly difficult task. But with your help and support, they will get through this, and they will be able to tell people about what's happened to them. When we're talking about child abuse, where it's been so hidden, where it's almost been by some members of society to be socially acceptable because we've ghettoised the problem, we've allowed it to happen. And as a civilised, amazing society, we've allowed it to happen at our peril. And it's a place of immense shame as a country we've allowed it to continue. Freedom Charity go out to a huge number of schools nationally, and we have a waiting list of schools that want us to come in and talk about it, because often schools feel very nervous about talking about the issue of forced marriage. They're worried that they're going to offend parents, they're worried they're going to offend students, they're worried that they're going to demonise particular elements of people in the communities. Well, why are we worrying about perpetrators and abusers in all of this? Surely it's the victims that we must be focused on all the time. And actually, if the perpetrators end up in prison, thank God that happens. If it can prevent this horrendous crime being committed, why are we being politically correct about it? We wouldn't be on any other issues out there. Why are we doing it on this particular issue? And it's come a time now, and I'm really pleased in the summer, and we're just waiting as it goes through its final readings in Parliament, it will become a criminal offence. Why do people get forced into marriage? People get forced into marriage for lots and lots of different reasons. They get forced into marriage to get a green card to come to the UK. Immigration is a big issue. It's an issue that people are very nervous about talking about, the fear of being called a racist, but that is a real reason why people get forced into marriage. People get forced into marriage because it's about control. The young women in particular that you're going to come into contact with, that some of you are already in contact with, are not often young girls that are allowed to have sleepovers, allowed to go to after-school clubs, have the big peer group, have the big friendship group. that has somebody on the outside. If they were going to be disowned by their family, they have nowhere else to go. So a life of rape, a life of abuse is better for them, they believe, than better of a life of isolation, of being on their own with nobody helping and supporting them. And that's often why young women go ahead with this. Suicide rates amongst Asian girls between the age of 16 and 25 are 3 times higher than any other group in the UK. I'm not saying for one moment that's all down to forced marriage or even dishonour violence, because we don't know the reason why those young girls have committed suicide. But we know it has to be a factor when young women are having to be 2 different people, somebody at home and somebody at college or university or school. One of the things in talking to young people was that they wanted a different way of communicating with them, and having an app was crucially important.
The app is very useful for that.
The app is going to be really useful for young people because social media, having apps on their phone is what all young people have. And Facebook, Twitter are all well and good, but actually let's have something on their phone that's going to make a difference.
My favourite thing about the app, I would say, is the fact that we're able to go and make a difference by going on the how can we help part of the app. And it makes us feel like, you know, if someone else can't access the app then, and we can, then we actually can make a difference to someone's life who may be in danger.
I think it's very easy to use, it's very welcoming, it's not complicated, it's quite simple, straightforward, but it's also very informative.
Well, when you go into the app, first of all you've got Fremont our logo at the front, and we've deliberately put him there because actually if a perpetrator or someone was looking through a young person's phone to see what they're downloading, it looks like a game. So no one would recognise that that's something that's to do with help and a charity. So that was one of the key things that young people and the police asked us to do at the very beginning. On the first screen you're looking at 4 boxes. You've got for you, so if you're the person in immediate danger, you know what button to press. If it's for a friend, then they can go in, and for professionals. And that's got a section not only for all professionals, but a special section in there for MPs, because we know a number of members of Parliament are contacted about forced marriage, and they often need to know what advice to give at the click of a button.
I think it will be a really good resource for teachers. It's set out very clearly, the advice is very concise, but I think that it will also be useful for anybody working with young people.
Can appeal to a lot of different age groups.
It's very, very quick to use and very accessible.
It's much more exciting than a leaflet.
We're using the app really as a last chance call. This might be the only opportunity someone has to contact someone, like the police if it's an emergency. They can contact the Foreign Office or the Freedom Helpline, as well as the Samaritans. So there's lots of boxes. It's got a location area, so it will tell you where you are, where the nearest hospital is, and where the nearest police station is to you. And it's got the signs of forced marriage on there as well, and what you should do if you recognise any of those signs.
A lot of people don't know the signs, and they don't know who exactly it is they can contact if something does happen.
It's developed from the idea of the book, but it's not fair by Aneeta. There is a list of the signs and symptoms and what to do, but actually the app makes it even better because it's clearer, and obviously with the modern technology, this is what young people want to do. They want to use the technology, and it's good to see the technology being used for such a positive reason.
The Forced Marriage Unit is throwing its weight behind the app because it's targeting an audience that otherwise we may not be able to access. A high proportion of the cases that contact us may be individuals who will have a smartphone or may have a friend who has a smartphone, and in that sense we're able to reach the needs of those that are at high risk.
It's a tool for every young person and every professional to have. It's a part of a toolkit that will definitely help save lives and make a huge difference.